So we think what we're really talking about here today, are you with us so far? Mostly? Yeah, mostly you are. We think that what we're talking about is what manifestation really is. What is manifestation? What is it? Is it the new car that you just drove home, or the one that you hope to do soon? Is it the house on the beach? Is it the relationship that you've been yearning for? Is it the pile of money? Is it the empire you're trying to build? Is it the perfect business environment? What is a manifestation? And we notice that often when you think about manifestation, you're thinking about those things or those experiences, those pinnacle, peak kind of things, those life-changing things. Oh, I want to create, or I want to manifest this kind of lifestyle, or this kind of relationship, or this kind of work experience, or this kind of meaningful, life-fulfilling experience. And we say, good for you, good for you, good for you. But when we talk about manifestation, we're talking about right here, right now. What has manifested in your life, which means how do you feel about your money? How do you feel about your body? How do you feel about your relationships? How do you feel about your economy? How do you feel about your government? How do you feel about your world involvement? How do you feel about your ecology? How do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? What is your perception of life? What is your manifested right here, right now perception of life? And the big question is, does it include, or better said, are you allowing it to include who you really are and what you really know and what you really think and what you really feel about all of that? Because most humans, the beasts are an exception because they're tuned in, tapped in, turned on. They are, you call it instinctually, they are instinctually focused, which means broad view, always focusing through them. But humans, we love you very much. Humans, we love you very much. Humans have managed to focus yourselves apart from the fullness of who you are, so that in many of your manifested moments, you're not allowing all that you have become. And that is so interesting to us, because all day, every day, as you've been sifting through the variety of life, it has caused you to create a vibrational version of you, which is where we stand, which is always the precursor to your manifested version. But you know what's required for your manifested version of you? Only vibrational compliance, only emotional compliance. You only got to be in the mood for what you're asking for, and it must be. That's all it is. Your attitude, your mood must line up with what you want. And if you're so hung up on reality, and if you're letting reality, which sometimes includes the absence of the new car, the new lover, the old lover, the good body, or whatever it is you're reaching for, if you're facing reality and noticing the absence of something wanted, and that absence is now dictating your mood, your manifested attitude, your manifested worldview, your manifested personal view. If your view is dictated to you or influenced to you, and you are in that vibration, which equals the mood or the emotion, you are depriving yourself of that full view. All that means is you've pinched yourself off from something that really is, and you can't see it yet. So, as you see something that you can't change, because you are not the creator of their reality, there is something that you can change, and that's the way you feel. And you've been there, because even when someone else is suffering, or even when someone else is afraid, or even when someone else is living something unwanted, you have the ability to focus in a way that you don't feel that way. You can distract yourself, or you can even find peace with whatever it is. And you could actually feel your heart begin to sing again, because that's natural. And in fact, you do that. You do it all the time. And then you feel guilty, because it doesn't feel right to you that your heart should sing when someone else is suffering. And we've been saying, and it sounds frivolous in this vernacular, but we've been saying, you can't get sick enough to help sick people get well, and you can't get poor enough to help poor people become prosperous, and you can't become confused enough to bring clarity to others. And we appeal to your logic, you know that. But what it really comes down to is you can't help anyone unless you are fully aligned with this energy of your source. And you can't be fully aligned with the energy of your source when you are feeling sorrow, when you're feeling sadness, or when you're feeling guilt. So what is it about you humans? It's so interesting. We love you so much, but you are so willing to deprive yourself of the fullness of who you are. And in this case, you're telling us because others are doing it. Others have deprived themselves of the fullness of who they are. And so I just don't think it's right for me to be the fullness of who I am. And we say, thank goodness Source doesn't do that. In other words, the only reason you could ever feel negative emotion is because you've chosen a vibration that the Source within you doesn't choose. If the Source within you would choose that same negative, full of resistance vibration, you wouldn't feel any separation. Have you ever had a conversation with someone where you're high and they're low in terms of vibration? They feel crummy and you feel high. And the longer you talk with them, it's like, all right, what's going to happen here? Are you coming up or am I coming down? Because one or the other is going to happen here if we're going to insist on hanging around together. It's a natural process in the desire to communicate. And so you hold your ground, they hold their ground. In other words, it's sort of a stalemate. And then they hit one of your buttons and down you come. Now you're communicating. And we say, on what level do you want to communicate? And what you're saying is, I feel guilty when I stay up here. I feel guilty. And we say, well, if you can maintain that, one of two things will happen. They'll come up there with you or they'll gravitate out of your experience. And you say, and if they gravitate out of my experience, then I'll feel more guilt. And we say, you got to get your act together. You got to decide who you are. Who are you? Are you source energy in a physical body? Are you? Are you source energy in a physical body? Then why would you put up with these emotions that don't feel like that? And we say you do it out of practice, you do it out of habit, you do it because most of it you can stand. In other words, you can stand most negative emotions because they don't take you to your knees. Most negative emotion is tolerable. You're used to feeling ornery and you're used to feeling overwhelmed and you're used to being angry. You're just used to it. And so you put up with it. And so you hang around in those vibrations even though it's a huge deprivation of who you are, because you could be soaring and you could be floating and you could be laughing and you could be feeling joy. You could be and should be feeling all of those wonderful things. And why for a moment you put up with any of that other stuff? It's only because you've been trained with a lot of others who've been putting up with that other stuff. Until finally you come to a place sometimes where there's really something that you care about that you can't control through any behavior. And you've got no choice, if it is your desire to feel good, other than to find a way of feeling good anyway. And when you do, you turn a vibrational corner where you finally find alignment with who you really are. And then everything that doesn't match that has to fall away from your experience, you see. And once you find this playful vibration, once you find this secure place, once you find this thing that you asked for the moment you sat down, once you find the alignment that gives you the power to assist someone that you really care about in finding their alignment, once you find that, this sense of well-being and security will just waft over you. And this is the thing that's most interesting about it. You're not going to need the evidence right away once you find that. But the evidence will come anyway. We just don't want you to get immediately then dependent again on the evidence. So the contrast causes you to ask, and somehow, some way, maybe it's by listening to us, maybe it's just because you want to feel good so much, you come into alignment with who you are. And as you come into alignment with who you are, then things start turning around right away. And almost immediately, you start looking at the evidence and becoming dependent on the evidence again already. But the evidence isn't strong enough. The evidence won't support you because you haven't been in alignment long enough to really get the evidence going, you see. So this is the reason that all day here today we've been trying to convince you that the manifestation that you're reaching for is the emotional manifestation over which you have complete control. And if you will believe that and go after it for a week and then for another week and then for another week, by the time you've done this for about 30 days, you will have established such a pattern of vibrational alignment with who you are that then the manifestations have to follow. They have to follow, but you can't keep flip-flopping. You have to find that manifestation of emotion and maintain maintain it long enough that the evidence will support it. But friends, we're not giving this to you because we want the evidence to come to you to support it. While we do want the evidence to come to you to support it, because we want you to have and be and all of those things that you're wanting, we want you to find the security of that alignment. We want you to find your playfulness, your friskiness, your youthfulness, your joy, your stability, your vitality, your health. We want you to find all of that. It is just a small, very small emotional journey away. You can do it. We think we have convinced you. We have given it everything that we have to help you to understand that that's what it is all about. You've heard us say things like vortex first, then manifestations follow. And now we are amending those statements to say manifestation of emotion inside the vortex first, which is a general manifestation, which is what you really want, to feel good, to feel empowered, to know your worthiness. And then all of the other details that support that will come in, like having plenty of money and lots of friends and all of the things that you're wanting, and being able to move around and rendezvous with the people that are looking for the same things that you're looking for. This is a very diverse world, and most people are not exactly on your wavelength. And you don't want to play with those that are not exactly on your wavelength. But before you start playing with anybody, you want to establish what your wavelength is. And the wavelength that you're wanting to establish is the wavelength of source energy within you, you see. A belief is a thought you keep thinking. A belief is a practiced thought. A belief is a vibrational pattern. So what you believe offers a vibration that law of attraction responds to. And there are no exceptions to that. So we were pleased when those who have been coming to the chair have been focused upon the fact that the chair wants to stay where it is. In other words, this is a sort of new thing, because usually people are tugging on the tape, but just focusing upon it is changing behavior, and that's all it takes. In other words, if you decide what you want to believe based upon the way it feels. So this is what we would do. We would wait until we are certain we're in the vortex, and we would acknowledge that in the vortex, meaning that aligned with source energy feeling, that resonance. And then from that feeling place, we would contemplate things that are important to us, because you can enhance beliefs from inside the vortex, ever so much more quickly than from outside the vortex. Recently, Karen and Esther were walking through the hallways in the kitchen on the way to a gathering like this. And as they approached the meeting room, Esther's cell phone rang, and it's Tracy saying, "Mom, your mic's on." And Esther thought about what they'd been talking about. And then later, as Esther and Tracy were talking about it, Esther is laughing because they were having fun. They were talking about the kitchen. They were talking about the staff. They were talking about the hotel. They were filled with appreciation, as they always are, as they're coming to play with you. But Tracy said, "You know, Mom, maybe we should just always pretend that our mic is on and that we are broadcasting to over 100 countries, as we often are." And Esther said, it's like that, isn't it? Our mic is always on. Whether we are holding the words back, our vibrational mic is always on. We are always broadcasting, and we are always achieving a point of attraction. And the universe and law of attraction is always responding to what we're broadcasting. And there is not a switch that works. You can't just switch. Esther doesn't want us to show you her switch. We were going to, but she has some measure of control over us. And so when you think about it, you are always emitting a vibrational signal. Do you know that? That you are vibrational beings living in a vibrational universe, and that it is a vibrational basis that law of attraction is responding to. And as humans, you often forget that because you are such good vibrational interpreters through your eyes and ears and so on. Your physical senses are all interpreters of vibration. Your most significant interpreter of vibration is your